I'm Rick Pearson of the Chicago Tribune, in tonight for Paul, and this is our nightly look at politics around your city, state, and nation. We begin tonight here in Illinois, where a social media post by a Republican organization is drawing widespread condemnation from Democratic leaders, Republican Party officials, and civil rights activists. Over the weekend, this image was posted on the Illinois Republican County Chairman Association's Facebook page. The pictures depict four minority congresswomen as, quote, the Jihad Squad, unquote, in what appears to be a parody of an action movie poster with the tagline, quote, political jihad is their game, and, quote, if you don't agree with their socialist ideology, you're racist, unquote. The meme also included the association's logo in the bottom corner. Mark Shaw, the president of the County Chairman's Association group, claims the post was not authorized and said his group is now reevaluating their so-called multi-stage approval process for any social media posts. He wrote yesterday, quote, an image which was not authorized by me was posted on the Facebook page. I am sorry if anyone who saw the image was offended by the contents, unquote. The image was removed from the website, but the fallout from the posting has been quick. Tim Schneider, chairman of the Illinois Republican Party, condemned the post in a written statement. He said, quote, the recent social media post coming from the IRCCA does not reflect my values or the Illinois Republican Party's values. Bigoted rhetoric greatly distracts from legitimate and important policy debates, unquote. Still, many see the controversy as the latest consequence of President Trump's escalating rhetoric, targeting the four Democratic female congresswomen of color.
The politics of Donald Trump are very contagious. The vectors of this infection that he's putting into the Republican Party are fear and hate and racism. And Republicans across the board have to resist this.
I have the reaction that most people of goodwill and with a brain do, which is that it's repugnant and foolish to repeat that. And of course they're running for cover and nobody's accepting responsibility, but someone needs to do. We don't need that in Illinois. We get enough of that nonsense from Washington, and it's really regrettable that they chose to make such a, I think, a really offensive post, and they should know that.
Some are now calling for legislation to deal with hate speech from elected officials. Ahmed Rehab is the executive director of Chicago's chapter on the Council of American Islamic Relations, and he joins me tonight on Skype with more. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
It is a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
Ahmed, when did you first learn about this posting? I know that it was done Friday evening, but it seemed to have caught the attention of the nation, quite frankly, yesterday afternoon.
Indeed, I received multiple texts and calls from people who had seen it before I had, and everyone was really disturbed by it. I agree with Senator Durbin and Mayor Lightfoot that this is disgusting and disturbing, and that this kind of politics of hatred and lowest common denominator fear-mongering is contagious. And while they apologize for it being a mistake, the question I have is, why are we seeing these types of mistakes too often from party officials within the GOP establishment? Why are we not seeing memes that, for example, deal with the civil rights and the human rights of Americans and immigrants who are suffering at our border? It's always memes that, you know, otherize people of color or people of a different religion than the majority, or whose parents were born elsewhere, just like this president is doing.
You know, I found it interesting in response to my story and some of the depiction of that movie poster that people said if the Republicans wanted to go after, say, socialism as an ideology, they could have posted something with Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, but yet they chose to do this depiction with four women of color.
That is a point we made very strongly in our press conference earlier today, and that is the defense that this is about socialism is a poor one, because there's no one who's accused of being a socialist more than Bernie Sanders, but no one's ever thought to tell Bernie Sanders, go back where you came from. No one says this to Peter King when they disagree with his Republican politics, or even to Donald Trump, whose mother was born in Scotland and whose grandfather on the paternal side was born in Germany. He's a pretty recent immigrant. Still, nobody tells them go back where you came from if they disagree with his politics. This is limited and only kept for people of color. Frankly, this is what this is about. This is about women of color being otherized by white men who believe that they don't have the same right to be in this country as they do, out of racism and bigotry and xenophobia.
Well, and also the use of the term jihad squad certainly seems
That's
to
right.
be targeted to people of the Muslim religion.
And it's a misuse of the term. Jihad simply means a struggle to get to a better place. Extremists in the religion, a small minority, hijacked the term and engaged in terrorism using the term. And those on the Republican side right now, unfortunately, and many in the Islamophobic world, have chosen the side of the extremists, the small minority of extremists, and taken their interpretation over the majority mainstream Muslim interpretation, which kind of puts a question mark as to where their mind's at. They're more in the extreme arena than in the mainstream arena.
Well, Ahmed, speaking of mainstream, given the fact that we have the president's sharp rhetoric, we have people like, in this case, someone in the Illinois Republican County Chairman's Association posting that meme. Is this getting mainstreamed?
Unfortunately, it is. I mean, when you have a president who is leading the nation with this kind of rhetoric from the very top, and we have to walk into schools and explain to young girls and young boys of color, don't listen to the president. You do belong here. You do belong here, even if you were born somewhere else, even if your parents were born somewhere else, just like most Americans at one point in time, if not now. That is the case or the nature of a nation that is built on immigration. Ronald Reagan, who Republicans love to idolize, gave his farewell speech as a love letter to immigrants and how they make this country a stronger, better place, and warned that the moment that we start to chisel away at those individuals' rights to come in here and live as equals is the moment we cease being great. So this whole notion of make America great again, so far has been in the hands of this man, this president, make America hate again. And we're here to say enough is enough. Let's talk about issues that matter: healthcare, education, the guns on the streets, children dying in the schools. Let's talk about things that matter to Americans. Enough of the gimmicky politics.
Well, Ahmed, obviously the strong backlash that occurred from this says a lot. But at the same time, you look at what the state Republican chairman said, you look at what the head of the Republican County Chairman's Association said. In some respects, the damage has already been done.
We welcome the fact that they walked this back and apologized for it. There are only two options: either stick to it or apologize and walk it back. They picked the right option. So kudos on that front. But this does not address the fact that the GOP president is leading this refrain. Maybe an intern, allegedly, working for them, screwed up, and they don't agree with the intern, but they agree with the president of the party, the president of the nation. That's a big problem. Now, if we assume that what they're saying is true, because again, there's a question mark on why there are so many memes and so many posts that are coming out of GOP officials, not just in the state, but nationwide, that are of the same persuasion, this sort of otherizing of minority Americans. The president is doing and getting away with it. In fact, I think it's a calculated decision. He thinks, since he doesn't have much in the way of policy plans for Americans, that he can garner some votes by appealing to the lowest common denominator, which is usually fear-mongering, hate-mongering, and divisive politics, otherizing the lowest